This is Basket Case Clubs, CPR Group's podcast where we turn basket case clubs into showcase clubs. Hello everyone and welcome back to Basket Case Clubs. I'm Michael Connolly and it is once again my pleasure to take you on this journey of basket casey goodness and crapfulness. Joining me as usual is my brother, Steve Connolly. Welcome, Steve.
It is your pleasure. I thought you were going to say delight then.
My delight. To my delight. I don't know. It's, yeah. To my delight. So what's interesting is that...
It's my pleasure to be here.
It is your pleasure to be here.
I'm
yes.
delighted to join you once again.
Yes. What's fascinating is that Steve, just before we started, let me know that he is in a bit of pain today. So can we all give Steve a big poor Stevie?
There's a real theme that runs through this podcast, and that's Steve's ailments. He's generally just back from some surgery. Most recently, the extraction of some wisdom teeth, some problematic wisdom teeth. So some would say it's been a great week because I haven't been able to speak as much as normal. However,
hang on, would that be all the people who live in your house?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But I'm now catching up with a vengeance. Quiet. Got a whole week of talking to do. So look out, everybody.
And how's your jaw going?
Yeah.
It being Monday and all, your jaw's probably sore.
Yep. But that's all right. Look, I'll come on this journey of basket casey goodness with you, and I have no idea what it is that we're here to discuss, but I'm looking forward to finding out.
Well,
wait, should we start with a segue?
No, I want to ask you about, and I want you to be really honest here. And if you can't think of an example, that's fine. But I want you to be honest if something comes to mind. I want you to think about the last case that you can remember where you heard of a volunteer throwing their toys out of the cot and quitting and doing so with some show of, shall we say, fanfare. So chucking a hissy fit, yelling and screaming, smashing the computer on the desk and leaving the room saying, "You're all a bunch of bloody assholes." Anything like that. Mm-hmm. Can you think of a story when that has happened?
Yep. Not necessarily exactly as you explained it, but I've got a story that comes to mind.
You want to share it?
Do you want me to share it?
Yeah, I want to
keep you in suspense. Yeah. So
yeah.
It was the secretary.
Yeah. I know something I can't tell you. All right, the end.
Great podcast episode. Look, that's record timing. It was a secretary of a football association. Their systems were lackluster at best, and all of the IT equipment that volunteer committee members used was their own personal equipment. I don't know what led to the departure of the secretary, but I know that there was some dissatisfaction on the part of the secretary that led to her resignation. So some misalignment, some, disagreement, grievance with others on the committee. Anyway, she walked away, but she took everything with her because all of the correspondence, meeting records, everything was on. So this was some time ago. This was probably about the time when businesses like ours were adopting cloud storage, but many others were not. And certainly in the not-for-profit sector, it was not prolific.
Okay. So we could be talking somewhere between 10 and 12 years ago.
Yeah. I was going to say 12. So okay. in that order, maybe a little longer. Yeah, but in that order. So the association was in a real pickle, and they had sought various legal opinions, and the opinion that they were able to settle on was a bit divided in terms of where the ownership lay. And I think we've talked about this in the past on the podcast. However, it was a several month long battle between the association and the secretary who had resigned in terms of the association seeking to regain this information and documentation and historic. And she'd been the secretary for maybe a decade. So it was a really long time, and there was a huge amount of reliance on her. And she just decided that she wasn't going to give it up until several months went on, and maybe she had a change of heart. Maybe there's more. There's definitely more to the story that I don't know, but the agreement was eventually reached that she would share information. But when the committee got it, there was a lot of missing stuff. There was a
Yeah.
lot of things that had been destroyed in that period.
So it was a pretty overt demonstration that she was not happy
Yeah,
and she left and she took action against the club. In this case, it was
inaction.
specifically, I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not sharing shit with you guys. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so far more recently than that, then, I'll give you a very similar example where an entire committee was ousted by the vote of the members at a general meeting. And there was a Gmail account that had been set up by the former secretary, and that Gmail account was connected to the former secretary's personal Gmail account in terms of the recovery email. And the argument was mounted, well, I set this up, it's attached to my personal email, so no, we're not handing it over. So the letterhead needed to be updated. People were still communicating via that former email address, former secretary's supposedly personally owned email address. And it got to the point where the committee didn't get any of the information or documentation stored in the associated Google Drive account, and they just had to set up a new email address, which
Right.
they've now done with an organisational email that is owned by the organisation rather than attached to someone's personal email.
Fascinating stories, and it's interesting that in both cases you've gone to the tech issues that leads to. Interesting in that it's got nothing to do with where I'm trying to take this discussion. Anyway, but
that's what you get for not giving me the information that I need.
I did, but you were doing your emails or checking your phone when I explained.
There you go.
So it's not on me, Steve, and because no one else can see anything, and I might be making this up out of whole cloth right here. So no, I've got plausible deniability, but that's interesting, and it's a reminder that we need to have fail safes for our tech. But what is interesting about these cases is that there was a display of discontent. In one case, it was one person being unhappy with the organisation. In the other one, the organisation being unhappy with a bunch of people.
Yep.
But then there was some level of hostility shown, anger. Sometimes it's literally violent when people slap things on tables. Like we've also had cases where people have had all four tyres on their car slashed in the car park at a special general meeting. So this is we see really bad behaviour like this. Now the point here is, most committees, I think that when a volunteer is disgruntled and is going to leave, that they're going to see the signs. I'm going to contend today that that's not the case. So we often think that when volunteers are going to leave, they're going to fly away and they're going to do it with fanfare and flurry. But that's not the case. They don't fly away, they drift away. So there are actually leading indicators that you can look for in the level of detachment that you see in volunteers, particularly committee volunteers, that are actually warning signs, and they're really clear and they're often missed because they're missed because they're misinterpreted. So what you'll see is a level of detachment. So somebody is less engaged in meetings. That's probably where it starts. They might have started engaged, but their level of engagement and presence in the meeting starts to drift. So during the meeting, they might start checking their phone a bit more. They might have their computer open in front of them, and you can presume that they're taking notes. They're not. They're doing their email. They're doing the shopping list for tomorrow. They've checked out. So they've retired on active duty in their voluntary role. From there, the signs get a bit more noticeable and a bit more difficult to cope with for the other volunteers on that committee when they stop showing up. So they're not at meetings. So they're still connected to the organisation, but disconnected from meetings. Then the level of disconnect goes a step further and they're no longer at the club. They may still be engaging on the occasional WhatsApp group message or the occasional email, but they're no longer at the club. And then it gets to the point where it just slowly gets worse and worse until you get radio silence. And you keep trying to contact them, you keep trying to email them, you're trying to do a flying minute, the resolution without motion, without a meeting, and they don't respond. And you're kind of saying, guys, we can't take your silence as agreeing to this motion. And because we need the motion to be passed unanimously or by a 75% majority, we actually need you to respond because otherwise silence is the same as a no, and you just get nothing.
Yep.
Then they start blocking you on social media, so you can't even message them. They're leaving WhatsApp groups, and
Sounds a lot like my high school breakups.
yeah, how did they make you feel?
Not loved.
Not love, but sometimes. Okay, and this is the really important point. If we get this wrong, the cost is that we're losing volunteers that we could very easily have saved. And this
Hmm.
is why the shit that we talk about is different. We don't create, these are the 12 and really important attributes of a good quality president. Like, we don't do that bullshit. We say, how are people struggling? How are people hurting? And if you think about it, that level of disconnect that I talked about in the meeting at the start,
Yep.
if you had just one strong leader in that club, and being a leader doesn't mean being a dictator, it
Mm.
just means being a strong person who can connect with people, who can build rapport and genuinely connect with people. If you had just one person on that committee that was able to connect with, let's call this volunteer Sam, and after that meeting, say, Sam, can I have a couple of minutes before you take off? And then let everyone else go and just ask a really important question. How are things with you? It's very similar to are you okay?
Mm.
To me, are you okay is a closed question because it's
Yeah, I
yes or
was
no.
just going to say that it's not the ideal question to ask because you can't get away with yes or no when someone says, "How are things with you?"
Yeah, because and the
Although I'm
answer
going to try that next time you ask me, "How are things with you?" Yes.
that and the answer that you get is usually not yes or no. It's usually no, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Fine.
No, I'm fine. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm
Yep.
fine. Just you can go and you can talk, ask me what happens when I ask my wife, so darling, how are you? And she says, I'm fine. I go, good, she's fine, and go and play golf or do what I was going to do anyway. No, she wasn't fine.
And now
Don't
neither are
take it on
you.
face value. And now not a, now no longer am I.
Yep.
So how are things with you? What you're going to discover is whatever comes out of that conversation. And that's all you need to do at that point. I've noticed that you're less engaged than you normally are. How's everything with you?
Yeah.
You're
And
going to go on.
I think the underlying reasons for this, in my experience, are things like a lack of leadership, to point to the elephant in the room. Like you said, all it takes is one strong leader to ask that question. But it's also that idea of diffusion of responsibility. And if there's four other people on a committee of five, so there's five of us total in the meeting, or there are six other people, or in some organisations, many more other people sitting in the room, it's easy to diffuse in your own mind subconsciously the responsibility for asking that person. Because let's face it, if there's someone, like you said, that were initially engaged and very dynamic and enthusiastic during meetings, and now they're withdrawing and far less so, everyone's noticed. But if no one says anything, the likely outcome is that no one will continue saying anything because we diffuse the responsibility to do so amongst everyone else in the room.
And then they drift away and we blame them.
Yeah.
It wasn't, we had an opportunity to find out. I've often said to my kids, ever since they were old enough to talk, the difficult thing to do in this situation is probably the right thing.
Yep.
Or I think I say it the other way around. The right thing to do is probably the hardest thing to do.
Mm.
Yeah, I can. And I got asked this last Thursday in a session I was running with some clubs. We are having trouble getting members to attend our events. And then we don't get volunteers. How can we get more? I've said, well, what have you tried? Oh, we've done Facebook messages, with an older cohort, so they're using Facebook. We've sent
Easy.
emails, and I started writing all
Easy.
of these things on the board. I said, oh, you can also do newsletters, and you can also put it on your own web page if you've got your own web page. They're taking
All
notes. I said,
easy. Yeah.
yeah. Said, but have you actually stood in front of someone and spoken to them? Oh, what do you mean? Oh, what do you mean? Was the response? I mean, talk to people. Like you actually need to engage. When you ask that question, you're going to find out something. And if that's the first case, it might just be, no, 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 everything's fine. I'm sorry, mate. I'm just a bit tired.
Mm.
but you've potentially opened the ability to have that conversation again. Now, this is I'm talking about saving volunteers and the wonderful work that they do, but it's actually more important because you're doing a welfare check.
Mm.
Because you might find out that, and it might not be that time, it might be the next time. And you say, I asked you a few weeks ago how things were. It, how are things with you? What's going on?
Mm.
What's going on with you? What's happening in your life? You'll find out there might be a breakup happening. There might be an aging and ailing parent who's unwell. There might be a child who's having relationship difficulties at school. You know, some school breakups. You talked about
Yep,
it
know all about
lightly
that.
today.
Yeah.
Dude, I got friends.
Mm.
I've got friends who still remember the difficulty that they had when they had friendships break
Yeah.
down at school. I'm one of them. You know, when I had a great mate, we used to play music together. He got involved in a different bunch of friends. I'm kind of glad I didn't follow because although he might have had more fun because there were a lot more drugs in his circle than in mine. But we drifted apart. And when we caught up for our, I won't say which reunion it was, I thought, whatever happened? Like,
Mm.
I still want to play music with this guy. He was a great friend, but we just went in different directions. So that made a real impact on my life. That means that some things going on in people's lives can have a greater or deeper impact than we from the outside can perceive.
Mm.
But it might also be, I feel stepped on here. I was given a job, and every time I go to do that job, somebody comes and takes it off me. Or I watch you guys do all of the fun work while I shovel freaking concrete.
Mm.
Like I've had that happen. I think I've told that story of going to a working bee and never going back.
Mm.
Because while all of the people who've been on the committee for longer at the PNC were actually pouring the slab and screeding the slab and drinking beer, I was shoveling concrete blend and bags of cement into the concrete mixer and wheelbarrowing it up the hill. I didn't go back. There's no way I'd go back. And had they asked me why I had a grumpy look on my face, I would have happily told them. And if it was now, I'd tell them without being asked. But I was young then and
Mm.
thought, oh, well, this is, I suppose, the initiation for the new dads at school. What a crock of shit, man. There was a problem, nobody identified it, they lost a volunteer. So there you go. But this happens in meetings all the time. People who leave their volunteer roles often don't fly away in a cloud of dust and shattered computers.
Mm.
They'll drift away. And there are signs that are there. Watch for those signs and take action early. Be a leader. You don't have to be chair or chairperson or president or vice president to be a leader in this situation. You can just be the unnamed committee member sitting next to someone and you can check in.
Mm.
You can sit because otherwise you're going to be that unnamed committee member who's bitching and moaning that they're not there anymore.
Not pulling
Take
their
action
weight.
early.
Mm.
Lead with character. Don't be a dick.
Yeah, and I think the lead with
Character
character.
and compassion.
Yeah, but also the lead element of that is really important. I think for all committee members to hear, not only our presidents, and there's often a perception that it's the president's job to lead, whereas we tout very strongly the message that it's the committee's job to lead.
Yep.
And each of the committee members have leadership qualities that are different from one another, and they absolutely, yeah, should exercise those in situations like this.
The simple tool that I want to leave everyone with this time around is really simple. It's just look around the room. Don't just look for who's contributing, look for who's not. Look for who might be leaning back or staying out of the conversation, maybe a little bit more than normal.
Mm.
And then don't go in with accusations or blame. Go in with character and compassion and find out if everything's okay. People volunteer their time freely, they don't get paid for it. Therefore, there should be zero expectation that if the organisation and the people around them aren't giving them a sense of fulfillment in their volunteer world, that they do not need to frickin' stay.
Yep.
So if they're not happy there and they got involved as a volunteer because they wanted some form of happiness or fulfillment, then I believe as good human beings, we all have an obligation to help them achieve that. So lead, lead with good character and lead with compassion and empathy because you will, by being a nice person, you're actually going to save volunteers that would otherwise go.
Or you'll
Magic
learn what you
sauce.
can or you can learn what you'll do differently next time. If you've already lost them, capitalize on the opportunity that they present as a great treasure trove of information of mistakes to avoid next time.
Yeah. Yep. And it might cost you a cup of coffee and a scone to have a discussion with them.
Yep.
Buy the cup of coffee and the scone, get some skin in the game. You'll learn more as a human being, not just a volunteer, from that one engagement than you might from 5 days of training with some Mickey Mouse accredited organization. Like
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
Thank you for taking me on that basket casey journey of compassion.
Yeah. Yeah. Steve, how are things with you?
A bit sore.
I was going to say, don't say fine.
No, I'm fine.
Oh, Steve, thank you again for joining me on this journey of what was basket casey interestingness.
The pleasure was all mine.
If you're not already following us on social media, make sure you do so. We've got interesting tidbits of information there every single day. Follow me at NFP Michael and, of course, at CPR Group as well. If you're not already connected to us with our newsletter, make sure you do that. We've got good information about fascinating things that are going on and really interesting stories and articles about things that our clients are doing and wins that they're achieving and goals that they're kicking. So make sure you sign up at cprgroup.com.au. Steve, I look forward to chatting again with you about all things basket casey in some amount of time.
See you then.
Whenever that is.
Whenever that is. Bye.
Bye. Basket Case Clubs acknowledges the traditional custodians of the country on which we record, being Yugambeh, Turrbal, Jagera and Kabi Kabi land. We recognise their enduring connection to land, waters and culture, and pay our respect to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to First Nations listeners.